I never thought I would be in this position where I had to out my own boss to the CEO of the company, especially since the CEO is also my dad. It sounds like some spoiled rich kid story when I say it out loud, and honestly I hate that. I worked really hard to make sure people at the company didn't see me as the boss's kid, but as someone who actually knew what they were doing. I wanted to earn my place, not just be handed it. But then my VP decided to test me in the worst possible way, and I had no choice but to go to the one person I had been trying to avoid running to for years. For context, I work at a mid-sized company my dad built from the ground up. He's not one of those untouchable billionaire types. He's just a guy who worked his ass off for decades to create a business that became successful enough to employ a few hundred people. Growing up, he wasn't a super present dad, because he was always working, but I admired him. I always thought he was brilliant, and part of me always wanted to prove I could measure up to him. When I graduated, I could have gone anywhere else, but he offered me a spot in the company if I wanted it. He said he wouldn't give me special treatment, that I'd be expected to actually deliver, and I agreed. I started at the very bottom, intentionally. I didn't go straight into some cushy management role. I started in operations, doing grunt work. I wanted to earn my stripes, and I did. The first few years were hell because people assumed I was just there to coast. Every mistake I made was amplified. Every accomplishment was downplayed. I had to work twice as hard just to be seen as average. But eventually people came around. I built relationships, delivered results, and I climbed the ladder in a way that felt real. Fast forward to about 2 years ago, I was promoted into a director role, reporting to a VP who I'll call Mark. On paper, Mark was the kind of leader you'd want. He had charisma, experience, and could talk a big game. But pretty quickly I noticed he didn't actually do much. He was great at presentations and at schmoozing executives, but when it came to real work, it always seemed to fall on people below him. He'd take credit for wins, shift blame for losses, and was always very careful about his image. At first I just accepted it as part of the corporate world. But over time, he started getting more aggressive toward me. He'd nitpick my reports in front of others. He'd casually drop comments like, "I know your dad is watching your career closely in meetings," which felt like subtle digs. When I got praise from other executives, he'd find a way to undermine it. It felt like he saw me as a threat. Things escalated about 6 months ago when he flat out told me that if I wanted to keep moving up, I needed to play his game. He pulled me aside after a leadership meeting and said, "Listen, you've done all right, but people only see you as the CEO's kid. If you want to survive here, you need to show me loyalty. Because if I don't back you, you won't last." I tried to laugh it off at first, but he wasn't joking. He basically told me that he could either make or break my career. I tried to ignore it and keep my head down, but it got worse. He started setting me up with impossible deadlines, then acting shocked when I couldn't meet them. He'd ask me to draft entire project plans, then present them as his own work. When I pushed back, he'd remind me that he was the one who wrote my performance reviews. It was blatant intimidation. The breaking point came during a quarterly review. We were in his office, just the two of us, and he said point blank, "If you keep trying to go around me, I'll make sure you're out of this company. Your dad won't be able to protect you. I'll have you fired before he even knows what happened." I remember sitting there, my chest tight, because it was so surreal to hear. This guy who was supposed to be my leader, my mentor even, was straight up threatening me. I went home that night completely defeated. For years I'd been trying to avoid using my dad as a shield. I wanted to be independent, to show I wasn't just coasting. But what choice did I have now? I was being cornered. It wasn't just about me either. I knew if Mark was doing this to me, he was probably pulling the same crap on other people who didn't have a CEO dad to fall back on. So I started documenting everything. Every email where he took credit for my work. Every Slack message where he hinted at loyalty. I even wrote down details of conversations right after they happened, so I had a record. It felt sneaky, but I knew I needed to protect myself. After a month, I had a solid pile of evidence. One weekend, I finally sat down with my dad. I told him everything. I didn't sugarcoat it, but I also admitted I felt guilty for even coming to him because I didn't want it to look like I was running to Daddy to solve my problems. He listened quietly the whole time, barely interrupting, which is rare for him. When I showed him the evidence, his face went cold. He didn't yell, but I could tell he was furious. The following week, things moved fast. HR got involved. An outside investigator was brought in. It turned out I wasn't the only one who had complaints. Others had stayed quiet out of fear. With my documentation, plus the testimony of others, the case against Mark was airtight. Within a month, he was gone. Officially it was mutual separation, but everyone knew the truth. After he left, the atmosphere in our department changed overnight. People were more relaxed, more open. It was like a weight had been lifted. For me personally, it was complicated. On one hand, I felt vindicated. I wasn't crazy. On the other hand, I hated that it took going to my dad to fix it. Part of me still wonders if people look at me differently now, like I only survived because of who my father is. I've been sitting with a lot of mixed feelings about it. Relief, anger, guilt, even pride in a weird way. I think the biggest lesson I've taken from this is that silence only helps the people who abuse their power. If I had kept quiet, Mark would still be there, making life miserable for everyone else. Maybe it took me being in a privileged position to finally expose him, but I'm glad I did. I don't know if I'll ever fully shake the feeling of being the CEO's kid at the company. That shadow is always going to follow me. But at least I know I stood up when it mattered. And I'll never forget the look on my dad's face when I showed him what his trusted VP had been doing. It was like he realized in that moment that even though he built this company, there were cracks he hadn't seen. I'm still here, still working, still proving myself. Maybe some people think I got by because of my last name. But I know the truth. I know what I went through. And I know that I didn't just save my own job. I helped clear out a toxic leader who was poisoning the whole place. Sometimes I wish I could have handled it differently, that I didn't need to go to my dad. But if I'm being honest, I don't regret it. Not one bit.